All right, let's look at animating and working with layer styles. So the cool thing is layer styles is something that you see in Photoshop. It's something that you see in Adobe Illustrator. So if you've already worked with layer styles in either Photoshop or Illustrator, then you already have kind of a leg up on what we're going to be doing here. So we set up our graphic in the last session, and we've got our text, and we've got a shape layer, and then we've got a solid in the background. We're going to work with the shape layer, and we're going to work with the text. So let's work with the shape layer first. I'm going to go to the shape layer, and I'm going to right-click right where it says shape layer. I'm going to go to layer styles, and I think the first thing I'm going to do is add a bevel and emboss. So I click and enter that in here, and then I can come down here, and there's a lot of controls here, but I can change the bevel and the emboss and move this out of the way. So I can change the size of the bevel. I can change the softness or hardness of the bevel. I can choose to use global light or not. I can change the angle of the bevel. I can change the altitude. All right, so there's a nice looking bevel on my box. I'm going to close that, and still working on the shape layer, I'm going to right click, layer styles, I'm going to add a drop shadow. There's my drop. I'm going to go down to drop shadow, and I can change the distance, the angle. So now I've got this really cool drop shadow, okay? So now, let's look at working with text. I'm going to close that. I'm going to go up to the text. I'm going to right click, choose layer styles, and I think I'm going to give this a drop shadow too. There's my drop shadow, and then I have to open it. And I'm going to set the distance and set the spread and the size. And so I've applied a few different layer styles. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to animate them, and I'm going to make it where they all kind of drop away. So let's start on the first frame, or we could do it backwards too. Let's start on the first frame. Let's start on 1 second, and let's click on distance. So it's going to be there at the end, and then I'm going to drag it to the beginning, and I'll set this distance to 0. So now that drop shadow is going to animate on. Okay. I'm going to close that, and I'm going to go to the shape layer, and let's go down to the drop shadow. Let's do the same thing. I'm going to drag it to 1 second. I'm going to go down to distance, click on the keyframe to set it to that, then drag it to the first frame, set the distance to 0. And so now that's going to animate on as well. I'm going to close that. And let's open that again. And this time, I'm going to close the drop shadow. Let's go on to bevel and emboss. I'm going to set it to 1 second. And I'm going to take I'm going to click on, let's click on direction, size, and depth. And then I'm going to drag it to the beginning and turn those on. So now they're going to animate on. So now all 3 of those effects are animating on the screen at the same time. So one of the cool things is not only can I create layer styles, I can animate them, okay? And so you can go in there and you can explore. There's a whole bunch of different layer styles. So if I go up to layer styles, there's drop shadow, inner shadow, outer glow, inner glow, bevel and emboss, etc. And they work similarly to the way they work in Photoshop, except for the fact that I can animate them over time. Let's preview our animation. So I'm just shortening the timeline, so it's just going to loop over this one area. And then I hit the space bar. And so the bevel and the drop shadows are animating onto the screen. Let's stop there.